In 1502, a nobleman Nero d'Orco was found in the town square of Cesena, cut cleanly in two, a bloodied knife resting beside him like a piece of stage furniture. He had been the man Cesare Borgia trusted to pacify the Romagna, ruthless, efficient, feared. And that was precisely the problem. The people's hatred of Ramiro had become useful to Borgia only once, in the moment he needed someone to blame. So Borgia gave them a body. Nothing about that execution was rage, it was arithmetic. Somewhere in that crowd stood a young diplomat named Niccolò Machiavelli, watching a man who did not lead with force, but with the careful, cold choreography of other people's fear and gratitude. He would spend the rest of his life trying to write down what he saw. Most people believe danger announces itself. A raised voice, a clenched fist, a visible threat. It rarely does. The people who the most damage to your career, your trust, your sense of reality, are the ones who never look dangerous at all. They look helpful. They look loyal. They look, often, like your biggest supporter. By the end of this video, you will be able to name 6 of them on sight. And by then, it may already be too late for the people around you who couldn't. Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a manual for tyrants. He wrote it as a field report, an unflinching account of how power actually moves through rooms, courts, and companies, stripped of the comforting lies people tell themselves about loyalty and virtue. Buried inside that report are 6 recurring character types, patterns of behavior so consistent across 5 centuries that you have almost certainly already met one this year. What you'll walk away with today isn't cynicism, it's recognition, and recognition, as you're about to see, is the only defense that has ever actually worked. Niccolò Machiavelli spent 14 years as a Florentine diplomat, sent to negotiate with popes, kings, and condottieri who would smile at him across a table while planning his city's ruin. In 1512, the Medici family returned to power, stripped Machiavelli of his post, imprisoned him, and had him tortured on suspicion of conspiracy. He wrote The Prince the following year, in exile on a small farm out Florence, not from a position of power, but from its wreckage. That matters. This wasn't philosophy written by someone comfortable in a palace. It was written by had watched, up close, exactly how the palace worked, and who had personally paid the price for misreading it. His central case study, referenced more than any other in the text, was Cesare Borgia, the same man behind the execution in Cesena. Machiavelli didn't fully admire Borgia, and he says so directly, noting his eventual downfall as a consequence of arrogance and poor succession planning. But he studied him the way a surgeon studies a difficult case, coldly, precisely, extracting the technique from the man. A secondary, quieter reference point runs through the text as well. Machiavelli's own experience negotiating with Pope Julius II, pontiff who used the language of holy duty to pursue purely territorial ambition, blending sin-sounding virtue with calculated self-interest so seamlessly that even seasoned diplomats struggled to locate the seam. It's from these 2 figures, more than any abstract theory, that the 6 archetypes emerge. The first pattern is the one people mistake for kindness, the flatterer. Machiavelli warns explicitly against surrounding yourself with those who tell you only what you want to hear, because flattery isn't affection, it's a slow-acting anesthetic. Picture a mid-level executive at a company meeting, agreeing enthusiastically with every decision their director makes, even the reckless ones, quietly positioning themselves as the only loyal voice in the room. The psychological mechanism here is simple and devastating. Humans are wired to trust people who make us feel intelligent and correct, and the flatterer weaponizes that wiring with surgical precision. In your own life, this shows up the moment someone agrees with you unusually fast, unusually often, right before they need something from you. Think about the last time someone praised a decision of yours, if you're honest, deserved real scrutiny, and ask yourself what they gained by not giving it. Closely related, and often working in tandem, is the mask of virtue, the second archetype, and in some ways the most dangerous, because it doesn't just deceive you, it recruits your own moral instincts, the weapon against you. Machiavelli observed that the appearance of virtue is often more useful to a ruler than virtue itself. People judge by what they see, not by what's calculated behind it. Pope Julius II is the model here. A man who spoke fluently in the language of sacred duty while expanding his territorial holdings with the patience of a chess player. The mechanism is that moral language disarms scrutiny. Once someone frames their action as righteous, most people stop asking whether it's also self-serving, because questioning virtue feels itself like a small moral failure. At work, this is the colleague who frames every self-serving maneuver, just wanting what's best for the team, and gets away with it. Who wants to be the person who argues against what's best for the team? This leads into the second major danger, not deception through kindness, but exploitation through disorder. The opportunist, the third archetype, thrives specifically in moments of chaos, because chaos is when the normal rules that would expose them are suspended. Machiavelli called this reliance on fortuna. But the skilled operator doesn't just wait for fortune's chaos, they position themselves near it in advance. The way certain courtiers always seemed to be standing close to power the instant a ruler died and a succession crisis opened. In a modern office, this is the person who is unusually calm, even energized, during a company crisis. Not because they're brave, but because a crisis is the only environment where the normal chain of accountability is down long enough for them to seize territory. Watch, specifically, who gains authority during your organization's worst weeks. It is rarely an accident. This is exactly where it deepens into something darker still, because some operators don't wait for chaos, they manufacture it. The provocateur, the fourth archetype, understands that conflict between two other people is often more useful than any direct action of their own. Machiavelli's Florence was saturated with this technique. Rival families quietly funding both sides of a dispute, ensuring that whoever won, the funder's position improved. The underlying mechanism is that a person embroiled in conflict has no attention left to notice who benefited from starting it. In a modern team, this looks like someone subtly stokes tension between two colleagues, feeds each one a slightly different version of events, and steps back to watch, emerging afterward as the reasonable one, the mediator, the person both sides now trust more than they trust each other. If you've ever noticed a conflict that seems to escalate faster than the facts justified, it's worth asking who was quietly narrating it to both sides. The final two archetypes are the most patient, and for that reason the hardest to see coming, because they operate on a timescale most people simply don't think in. Two-faced ally, the fifth archetype, offers loyalty that is entirely genuine, right up until the moment it isn't. This was Borgia's own method with Ramiro Giorgio. Absolute trust, real authority, real usefulness, extended for exactly as long as it served a purpose, and withdrawn instantly the moment it didn't. The psychological mechanism is that genuine trust, extended for years, creates a blind spot precisely because it was genuine. You don't expect betrayal from someone who has already been loyal 100 times. which is exactly why the 101st time is so effective. And finally, the silent accumulator, the sixth archetype, the person who says little, claims less credit than they've earned, and spends years quietly gathering information and access, never cashing any of it in until the exact moment the accumulated total finally matters. Here is the uncomfortable center of Machiavelli's argument. None of these archetypes are inherently evil in the cartoonish sense. Flattery, patience, calm under pressure, moral language, loyalty, and quiet accumulation are, in almost every other context, virtues. That's precisely what makes them dangerous. They don't look like weapons because, most of the time, they aren't being used as weapons. The honest counterargument deserves real weight here. A person can be genuinely calm in a crisis, genuinely loyal for years, genuinely moral in their framing, without any of it being strategic at all. Machiavelli's insight was never that these traits are proof of manipulation. It's that they are the raw material manipulation is built from, which means the traits themselves tell you nothing. Only the pattern, repeated across time and stakes, tells you anything at all. So here is what to actually do with this. Start keeping what amounts to a private informal ledger, not of people, but of moments. Who benefited, specifically, the last 3 times something around you went wrong. Not who caused it, who benefited from it. Do this for 1 month before drawing any conclusions, because a single data point proves nothing, and 6 archetypes as virtues require more than 1 instance to separate from ordinary human behavior. Then run a second, quieter check. The next time someone frames a self-serving request in moral language. It's really about what's best for everyone. Pause for 3 full seconds before responding, and ask yourself what the request would sound like with the moral framing removed entirely. If it still sounds reasonable stripped of the virtue language, it probably is reasonable. If it suddenly sounds thinner, you've found your answer. Ramiro de Orco believed, until the very end, that his usefulness made him safe. It didn't. Usefulness was never the thing keeping him alive. It was the only thing that had, and the moment it stopped serving, board arithmetic, the knife had already been decided on. That's the reframe worth carrying out of this video. Safety was never about being loyal, being useful, or being liked. It was about correctly reading the 6 patterns operating in the room around you. Patterns Machiavelli mapped 500 years ago, and that have not changed since. Because human incentives have not changed since. The predators rarely look like predators. That's the entire method. Mastering the ability to see them anyway is not cynicism. It's the last standing between you and the town square. If this kind of pattern recognition is what you're here for, this channel exists to keep building it with you.